Well, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight, and with that, I'm going to call to order the May 1st City Council. The City Council work meeting. Is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Make motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion made, second discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. Item number 3, City Council minutes discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Time Saver Offsite Secretarial Service has prepared the city council minutes since April 2nd, 2014. Over the course of their work, there have been several discussions regarding the types of minutes city council has preferred. These have ranged from semi-verbatim type to summary minutes, with the detailed style minutes being the standard since 2015. Carla Worth, President and CEO of Time Savers, will present options to City Council tonight regarding different forms of minute formats that can be produced and present these to Council for review and discussion. Ms. Worth has provided a comparison of the options available for minutes using an excerpt from our April 3rd, 2023 work meeting, Agenda Item 4.0, Ordinance Amendments, to outline the differences between the alternatives. Attachment 1 in your packet was presented to Council at the April 3rd, 2023 work meeting and provided an estimate as to the cost of verbatim transcripts. This is an information item, and staff requests direction from Council at the conclusion of the discussion of this item. At this time, I'll introduce Mrs. Worth, and she can make her presentation.
Hi, I'm Carla Worth.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, and we even have prepared minutes for you before that time under a different contract. So I presented in the information I gave you with 5 different levels of detail, going from the bare minimum of action minutes all the way down to an unedited transcript that was produced by a program called Otter, which is it's phonetic recognition. It's artificial intelligence program that just spells out everything phonetically as it hears it. So it will even, when you're talking about numbers or citing a section in the code, and you're saying like 9.6-2, it will give you that alphabetically instead of numerically. So those are just kind of some of the differences between what we're preparing for you right now as detailed style minutes, which is getting close to a transcript if you were able to compare the two. There's not a lot of information in our minutes that isn't included in the transcript. The formatting is different in that the transcript is single line, where we're combining and we're segueing between paragraphs and comments. So it's not a true verbatim transcript that you're getting now. So I'm available to answer questions if you have them, or...
Could you do me a favor and could you explain the exact sequence of events from start to finish, doing it the way you're doing it now?
Sure. So the day after the meeting, staff uploads the video of
To the media
meeting,
center?
right, to
Okay.
Dropbox, and then we download that into our equipment and then upload it into a program called ExpressScribe. And that is not a voice recognition program, it's a transcription program. So in having that downloaded into our laptop, we can use a foot pedal and headphones, just like the old days of doing a dictation. So with the foot pedal, we can go forward, back, stop, instead of using our hands to take our hands off the keyboard to do it. If we have it loaded up like off of your website, we would have to stop it, start it, pause it, and start it up again.
Yeah.
And so then we listen to every word that's said and type that into the meeting minutes. And so I should explain a little more maybe. So when we actually get to typing the minutes, we have ExpressScribe running on one side of our screen, and that's showing us the video of the meeting. And then on the other side, we're typing the meeting minutes. So we have our Word document open. We have both programs open at the same
That
time.
must take some getting used to.
It does.
Yeah, I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
I like you call them in the sheet you gave us before, full detailed minutes.
Right.
I like them okay. It just seems at times there's no proofing of it for not only typos, but for, making sense as you read it. And, I just wondered, does anyone edit this? Like, does Jack edit it or anything? Because it goes to him, and even most recently, it went to you first and then came to all of us.
Yep.
And, one thing I
Right.
would like, if we stick with it going forward, I don't know how this is all gonna turn out, but I would like to get it directly from you, so I can see the raw,
Okay.
the raw material.
Our employee, our transcriptionist, of course, is typing the minutes in and then doing visual proof on them.
Mhm.
They come through me and I'm doing more grammatic checks and formatting checks.
Mhm.
And then anything we're not sure of, that we didn't catch an address or name, or it's a term we're not familiar with, we'll leave that highlighted. And when I send them to staff, I will ask them to verify and correct whatever is highlighted in the
Staff
minutes.
being Jack,
Right,
okay.
before they come to you. And our contract, as it's stated right now, authorizes me to give the minutes only to a staff person. We don't, release them to anybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's open for discussion, but I just had that question about it,
Mhm.
to understand the procedure.
That's the
Nobody
procedure
ever
right now.
explained it
Mhm.
to me.
Yep.
Thank you. Don't be bashful, guys.
Thoughts, questions?
So which transcription thing do we have right now behind you on? Which one are we going by?
You do detailed,
We do detailed?
yes.
So how much of a difference, I guess, between that and edited transcription?
I just worked on a 30-minute transcript off of that one agenda item, and I only picked it because all of you were there and all of you spoke, and it didn't involve a really long staff report. So, the number of pages will depend on the topic and how long the staff report goes. If it's a half-hour discussion and the staff report is 15 or 10 minutes of it, that's all in one block of text. Where if it's a discussion between members, then those are many smaller paragraphs. So then that ends up being more pages of
Okay.
meeting minutes. So it's really hard to nail that down, but I did put at the end of this memo, how many pages it meant for your agenda item when you talked about that code amendment. So, the
Okay.
action minutes were down to a quarter of a page. Right now, of the accounts we cover, only Edina uses that
Okay.
want that little. And the only one that is out to an edited transcript is Orno.
Okay.
So those are the two outliers, kind of.
'Cause
Everybody
person-
else is in between.
Okay, personally, I like the edited transcript better. I think it explained it more, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Do you remember what the original motivation was for moving to full detail back in 2014 or whenever it was? Was it to save money? Was it to reduce the number of pages that have to be
East
read?
Belleville's never been at a transcript level.
Never?
No.
What was it before?
It was probably more summary.
Summary? I know that's one of my concerns, is I don't wanna read 85 pages of notes for a meeting I just was at, a week
Right.
prior, so,
Well, you kind of have to consider what your meeting minutes are going to be used for.
yeah.
They're supposed to be the historic record of your actions. And you need to decide how much you need to create, store, archive forever. There's ongoing costs with documents you create.
Right, and as
Figured out.
Brian correctly said at a meeting a few back, the ultimate historical record is the video on audio. I mean, which we have, presumably.
Is
Lately,
that- is
lately
that
we've,
your
lately we've had issues with audio and video, but,
We've been using them hand in hand,
Okay,
so
most cities.
essentially just to review, we go to the minutes, but if we want more detail, we go to
Yeah.
the video.
Right, and
you
that's
get the
what
verbatim,
your
yeah,
residents would do too.
yeah.
Most cities use the paper document as their historic document because it has never changed. The media has changed from, from video to digital. So that has changed along the way. So unless you're keeping up your digital files and always keeping them new in the latest format, you won't be able to access them. So that's why most cities stick with paper.
Well, in that case, it should be verbatim, shouldn't it? Instead of full detail.
Your decision.
Which has it about, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that does have an element of interpretation in it, right? By the person who's doing
Yes,
the transcribing, okay.
yes. Yep,
All right.
it does. And I maybe should have explained earlier on the ownership of the document. So TimeSaver creates this document, and then by our contract, we provide it digitally now. We didn't used to, it used to be on a disc, but now we provide it digitally to your city manager or whoever they designate for us to send it to. And at that point, you own the document. Our contract is to give you draft minutes with the expectation that staff and you will read the minutes. If you see anything you don't agree with or you think is misstated, you'll correct it at the meeting that they're considered for adoption. And then that document is owned by the city.
Mhm. Well, we've had discussions lately where there are things that have been omitted or things that have been misstated. I mean, it wasn't for me, so can you guys elaborate on what it was?
I can remember, I think it was last council meeting, where Kevin made the statement when Aaron Berg was sitting there, and he had the name tag in front of him, community director. And he made that statement saying, oh, you already got the title there. Well, that wasn't in the minutes at all.
That's not something we normally include.
So I mean, stuff like that sometimes is important to have there just for a statement. But then, are you the one that makes the decision not to put it in?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
It's, we're looking at, well, if that's what you want in, that's what we'll put in.
Well, see, that's what I mean.
But-
then.
Right, so every city is different, but most cities wouldn't put off-the-cuff comments or, I can cite on what I listened to on this code enforcement, there were just lighthearted comments at the end about creating a disaster or no, I don't think so. We would not normally put those in the meeting minutes. Those are just off-the-cuff comments and part of the conversation, but they're not part of the decision-making process and the rationale behind your decisions.
But they would be in a verbatim.
They would be in, yeah, if you did verbatim, they'd be in there, yeah.
So it's all a balancing act. It's a balance of money and a balance of volume,
Right?
for lack of a better
And
term.
another consideration is how are your meeting minutes being used? Once you approve them, how are they being used after that?
Little,
So that's something you have to wrestle with,
for the most part.
We
right?
load them up on our website and there they sit, pretty much.
If you're gonna research a past action, you would maybe go back and read, so you got the conversation, the flavor, and the reason for the decisions that were made, or a dissenting vote. We try to detail that if the, reasons are given. But you wouldn't go back to the meeting minutes to view any off-the-cuff comments or conversations or banter. You go back to the minutes to find factual information.
Substantial.
Right, so, we serve at your pleasure, so, and we'll create the meeting minutes at the level that you want. But those are, broader policy decisions of the council.
What are your thoughts there, Mr. Davis?
Well, again, I think it's the council preference on how they want the minutes. If they want more detail, then that's what we need to provide. If they want to keep them like they are, it just depends on what you think you need for information on the minutes.
Well, my opinion, I like the minutes how they are right now, the detailed style of the minutes. They give enough information to know how we got from A to B to make a decision. If more detail is needed, we have the video recordings. Price is reasonable for the amount of detail that we do get in them versus going to a transcript. It's almost twice the price of $2,400 for the current versus $4,275 for a transcript. For what we do with them, right now we pretty much just put them on the website, and there they are. Now, we don't go back to them a whole lot. On some occasions, we might for research, but I think they give a very good display of what
They
happens during a
strike
meeting.
the balance.
I think it's a good balance.
And echoing what Brian said and what Carla mentioned previously, these are draft minutes, and it's up to us to edit those. Like she said, she highlights stuff, we correct spelling or add names or addresses. But anything that city council feels it needs to be added or was misstated, they have the option of correcting it when we review the minutes at the meeting. So we can go back and add those things if you think there's anything left out or anything that needs to be omitted or changed. We've done that before and gone back and looked at the videos and got the exact statements and been able to add those or change the minutes to reflect that.
That's one concern I'm thinking about lately, because the video is not even available to look at. Like the planning commission, the last one.
The planning commission, there's
I
an
mean, you
issue.
got issues with that, and it's like,
Well, it will be available. We have someone here coming Wednesday to get that corrected, so it will be available.
so do we know what caused that?
There's a number of things that caused it. We had a power outage here Wednesday that affected some things. There
That was a week before.
I understand that, but let me finish this. And at the planning commission meeting, we had quite a few people in here that were on their phones. We were using this computer that's on a Wi-Fi signal. That's what caused it to lock up. Now we're using one that's on hardwire. We didn't have an issue with the town hall. We're assuming that hypothesis is correct, but we will have somebody in here Wednesday to correct that and retrieve that file on the planning commission.
Jack, I'd rather you say, we got a big Band-Aid back there. That stuff is antique. That stuff needs to be upgraded. It's, in my words, it's junk, you know?
Well, it may be more of a software issue too than a hardware issue, but we had somebody out here last week to look at it. They're gonna give us some estimates on what upgrades and what fixes we need to make sure we don't have the
'Cause
problem.
it seems like every week somebody's texting or calling, something went out, YouTube went out, Channel 10 went out, or, we gotta fix it, one way or another. I know it's probably gonna cost a few bucks, but I think it's something that we've gotta fix. Put it in the budget and fix it one of these times.
Like I say, we have those estimates coming, so we'll be able to present that here within hopefully 2 weeks.
Okay.
Do we know how much money was spent on this current system right now?
The system back there is kind of none of the components are consistent. There's different things, but the software interfaces are probably the biggest issue back there. We did have some upgrades here in City Hall about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was about $80,000. These things are not cheap.
Yeah, from my understanding, all the equipment kind of got added as technology changed, and they tried to put everything together to make it work, and for the most part it has, but apparently now we might just have to break down and get something that won't have issues.
Well, is there any possibility to sell this equipment, or like what did we do with our last equipment then? Did we just sell that off, or do we?
Most of it was additions. It was in here. Anything electronic that old probably has no value.
We could probably donate it to the high school if they still have their AV program. Might get some good use out of it.
So getting back to these minutes, is there, what's the preference? The detail's fine with me. Like I said, if we need the info, we go back to the tape and we can usually correct it there, so, or we can get a hold of Carla, so.
Yeah, I agree. I like the detailed more. I think it was a nice clearing of the air to find out where stuff was being edited and by who. because we know certain stuff was said and then it's not there and it's, you know, it's a question mark. And to be able to clear that up, you know, helps a lot. So thank you.
Sure. And if there is an item that's controversial or you want more detail, you just need to let us know ahead of time. And we can give you more detail on that item.
Very good.
Got all your info you need, Jack?
Unless there's any further direction, I'm assuming we'll stay with the style of minutes we said. As Carl said, if there's something you want more detail on, just be sure and let us know. We'll notify her and she can add it to those items. And again, if we need to make any edits or corrections to the minutes when they're approved in the draft form, we can do that when we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
And if it would help, we can line number, you know, if that would help with
Yeah.
edits, we can put line numbering on the pages.
Is that okay if we talk to you directly?
No,
It's not okay?
no, I go through Jack.
Go through Jack.
Yeah, we're totally non-political, we don't get involved in.
No, I mean, I don't mean
conversations.
about anything other than like these words or those words seem weird, that kind of thing.
We get that direction through Jack.
Okay.
I prefer it that way rather than,
Too confusing with everybody.
well, and it's just, we're totally unbiased and impartial. That's why cities use us. So we don't want the look of having conversations offline with one member without everyone being included in that conversation. So,
Rather than 10 cooks telling you what to do.
pardon me?
Rather than 10 cooks
Yes.
telling you what to
And that's
do.
why giving the
That makes
minutes
no
to one
sense.
source for us, and then staff can be responsible to get it out to you.
So Carla, you mentioned that you could put numbers on there. Is that a pain to do that?
No, very easy to do that.
I'd appreciate it.
Andover
Yeah.
does that, and it makes it easy
Yeah.
for correction when they
Right.
cite the
Yeah.
line, because we expect corrections from you.
Okay, I'd
We
appreciate
expect
that.
you, yeah,
Definitely. Thank you.
okay, we'll make that change.
Thank you, Carla.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Item number 4, conduit bond presentation, Nexus and Cambia Hills.
The City Finance Committee met with potential purchasers for the Cambia Hills facility on Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. The purchaser is Nexus Family Healing, and they propose to provide the same service that was offered by the Hills Group. A major topic of discussion at that meeting related to the issuance of conduit bonds for the financing of the purchase of the facility. We've been assured by both our financial consultant and Dorsey Whitney that the city would have no liability of exposure if we should be involved in the issuance. Dorsey, Whitney, and Ellers are present at tonight's work meeting to explain the process, benefits, and any potential issues for the city to consider in the upcoming discussion regarding participation in this type of bonding for the project. Nexus and Certus representatives are also in attendance tonight, and as well as the ISD School Board Chairperson and Superintendent. Normally in these situations, a typical charge by a city for this type of assistance could be 1% of the par value of the bonds. In this case, the city portion of the issue would be $10 million, which would generate up to $100,000 to cover any expenses relating to the issuance and for our participation in this form of financing. This fee is negotiable. Council is requested to discuss this as an information item. Any action on this matter can be set for a regular council meeting at a date to be determined. So at this time, I'll turn it over to a representative from Dorsey Whitney.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council, my name is Rhonda Scobie. I am with Dorsey and Whitney. I am here tonight as your counsel, as bond counsel to the city. Nexus is separately represented by their own counsel. As Jack Davis mentioned, Nexus has proposed that the city issue conduit bonds. And just by way of background, I want to share a little bit about that process and give you a chance to ask any questions about what that would mean for the city. Conduit bonds, like the name sounds, it's a pass-through. It passes through the city. It's a two-step process that would enable the borrower to benefit from tax-exempt status for the bonds. That would mean that the borrower, who is a nonprofit, could borrow at a lower interest rate because the investors are willing to accept a lower rate of interest if they're not being taxed on it. That's the idea behind it. The way it would work would be a two-step process. The city would issue the original bonds, and then it would loan those proceeds to the borrower, in this case, Nexus. Nexus would have full responsibility for paying back those bonds. The city would have no financial obligation to repay the bonds. State law in particular requires a notice right in the bonds that says the city has no liability for this debt. The borrower would also be responsible for all costs. So if there's a notice that needs to be published, that's the borrower's cost, that's not the city's cost. They'll pay their attorney's fees as well as the fees of your attorney, my fees, and any other costs associated with the financing. One subset of tax-exempt bonds, a category within that, is bank qualification. Small issuers, and that is an issuer that issues less than $10 million of tax-exempt bonds in a year. And there are some other qualifications there, but that's kind of the high-level summary. Can issue these special bank-qualified bonds. And this means that banks in particular, as opposed to other bond investors, can purchase these bank-qualified bonds. So it gives you a bigger pool of investors, and it brings the interest rate down a little bit more. And that is what Nexus is proposing, is requesting the city to do, to issue bank-qualified bonds. This means that this particular bond issuance would use all of the city's bank qualification capacity for 2023. It's my understanding that the city doesn't intend to issue its own bonds or any other tax-exempt bonds this year. So capacity, using that capacity shouldn't present a problem for the city, but I want to point that out just so you're aware of one of the potential issues related to this. We often include provisions in the documents that if something happens in the city and you do wish in 2023, which is the only year that we're looking at for purposes of the limit, that the borrower would be responsible for making up any interest rate differential that the city would have to pay by not being able to issue its own bank qualified bonds. So that's kind of the big background picture. If the city does wish to go forward with this, there would be 2 more meetings coming up where you would hear about this process. One would be a meeting, and this could be your next meeting. It could be May 8th if that is how the city would like to handle it, where you would call for a public hearing. And then we'd handle publishing notice of that public hearing in your official paper more than 14 days ahead of the public hearing. That public hearing would be held at a later meeting, which could be your June 12th meeting if you choose to go forward. So that's kind of the background on the process. Scott McGuire and several other folks are here from Nexus and can speak more specifically about the project itself and what they propose to do with the project. But I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. If the type of assistance is 1%, per value of the bond, and if we issue a bond for $10 million and we can generate up to 100,000, my packet says that's used to cover, any expenses related to the issuance and for our participation in this form of financing. I thought I just heard you say that we were not responsible for anything like that, which would make that $100,000 that we could generate not go for paying any of this?
Well, we see a wide range of fees on these deals. And I will leave it to Nexus and your financial advisors to talk about what fee level it makes sense in this particular situation. But you are correct. There should be no fees borne by the city as a result of this transaction.
Thank you.
So are there any risks to the city with this?
The BQ cap issue is kind of what I see as the big risk, and in my mind, it's a soft risk. There are ways to mitigate that by putting in place the covenants that would require payment of that lost savings. And then as far as other risks, there is no risk of being held responsible for these bonds.
Okay, can you say what the first one was?
Oh, the bank qualification issue.
Bank qualification, okay.
So that's that $10 million cap. Each city, or any other issue, or a county or a redevelopment agency, has the potential to designate up to $10 million of bonds as bank qualified every year. It's a special subcategory of tax-exempt bonds that opens up the market to banks instead of just other types of bondholders. And as a result, for debt that is designated as, we call it BQ sometimes, bank qualified, that type of debt can carry a lower interest rate than other tax-exempt indebtedness. So to protect against that, we would put covenants in the deal that if you did want to later designate your own bonds as BQ, but were prohibited because you had issued this debt, the borrower would be responsible for making up that inability to do it as BQ.
Okay, would this affect the city's borrowing ability as far as asset to debt ratio or any debt or?
It wouldn't. It doesn't count against your city's debt ceiling or debt limits.
Okay. And if this company that gets the conduit bond, if they, worst case scenario, default, go bankrupt, et cetera, what happens? How is this covered? What are the risks to the city then?
The city, even in that scenario, even if everything doesn't work out as planned, if there's a default, it doesn't go against the city, it goes against the borrower.
So,
And then the borrower would look towards presumably a mortgage on the facility to sell that and pay off the debt.
and in that scenario, would that have anything to do with the city's credit rating or anything else?
No. It truly passes through the city and goes to the borrower.
Rhonda, for making up those BQ differences,
Yeah.
if it exceeded the $10 million and the city wanted to issue bonds this year, that's only for this year, is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. Because 2024, a new $10 million limit comes into place.
Okay.
Thank you for your concise explanation.
Thank you.
Jack, with doing this, would that set any precedent on city council for doing it in the future?
No, I think everything has to be looked on a case-by-case basis. Just because we do it for this one doesn't necessarily mean we have to do it for another one if it comes up.
Yeah.
It's our option that we evaluate based on the information too with a financial advisor on what's sound for the city.
And I don't believe the city has done a conduit bond before, have they?
No.
Okay, Jack, is there any word from Ham Lake on, they will be doing part of this conduit bond as well, their own individual for this company, is there any word on their status, with their interest, what
The-
they will be doing?
The only thing I know is that they have tentatively agreed to participate that, and Rhonda can probably speak to that more than I can.
I believe they're meeting tonight as well and having similar conversations.
Okay,
We represent them as well, and we'll sure report back when we know more about whether they'll participate, and we'll share with them whether you're planning to participate.
oh, okay, I wasn't sure if you knew about Ham Lake or not, so
Yeah, yeah.
that's why I directed it to
Yeah.
Jack, but thank you,
Now is the exact time that they're figuring that out, yeah.
good.
At the risk of getting the cart in front of the horse, I spoke with someone earlier who spoke to the mayor of Ham Lake today, and they don't seem very positive toward doing this. They don't see how it benefits Ham Lake, or they're not in the St. Francis School District, and all, just on several things. How it turns out tonight, it's not up to the mayor alone, it's up to the whole council, but anyway, so. I'm
Good to
sure
know.
you'll- Sure you'll know pretty soon.
Are we the only two cities that are considering this in this area?
Well, there are only two that are needed,
Okay.
and Ham Lake and East Bethel are the two that have been asked. There are some other options, but these two cities make the most sense based on the location of the project.
It's proximity, basically.
It's right in East Bethel, and Ham Lake, as you know, clearly is very, very close, and I think there would be a draw there as well. But there may be more insights from Nexus folks about the geography that they intend to serve.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for the concise explanation.
Happy to be here.
Complex topic, and you broke it down very clearly.
Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, at this time, if Rhonda's finished with her presentation, I'd like to ask Ms. Stacy Kilvane, our financial advisor, to come up and brief us on any issues that she may see with this proposed bond issuance.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Stacy Quilvane with Ellers and Associates, your municipal advisor. It's great to see you tonight. I think Rhonda did a great job of overviewing everything. Maybe just a couple additions to that, right? You asked about what's the risk to the city, and again, there really is none. There's not a financial risk at all. The big thing that typically comes to play with this is any IRS audits that you get. So the thing to know that even though you're the conduit, the IRS does not contact Nexus. They contact Jack, the city. So if you get that, and we've worked with Dorsey on these for other, either nonprofits, housing developers, or others that come forward. And really what the IRS is looking at is what are the funds spent appropriately, right? And what's their spend down or draw down, and that's more for new construction. The nice thing about this one is they're just buying an asset, and from my understanding is they're not doing any rehab or improvements or, expansions onto it. So it's really gonna be, was it if you ever got drawn for an audit, right? It's pretty simple and clarified that we're able to do that. I know there were some questions on the fee. Again, traditionally, most cities either charge typically a 1% of the par amount. Some charge a smaller amount up front and a fee over time. More folks switch to the fee up front because, again, it's an administrative thing that you have to sit and follow over the years to make sure you're getting the fee collected from them on an ongoing basis. As Jack had stated, that's something that's negotiable. And that's in your purview to do. I don't think here's the decision to sit and negotiate that tonight because we have not seen the financials yet with regards to that. But again, most cities are looking at, what do you want to do to help benefit this end user, right? Usually when it's the for-profit developers, they're willing to charge the full fee, right? When you have nonprofit users or uses like this, there may be more of a negotiation. So again, part of our process that we'll do is once you guys decide if you're looking to move forward, we are going to request the financials from Nexus because even though you're not responsible financially for the stat, we want to have an understanding or be able to opine for you or help you understand that, yes, we think based upon their operating pro forma that there's a good likelihood that they'll be able to repay the debt. And so the likelihood of them defaulting is not going to come to fruition in the future. So again, we don't always have a crystal ball, but we like to review the financials with regards to that. So I'm happy to stand for any other questions.
Repayment of the debt, who repays who? Is Nexus repaying the city, or are they skipping that and going right to the borrower, or how does that happen?
Mayor, council member, it goes directly to lender. You're not involved at all. You're only in the upfront process and you're just acting as a conduit. You don't get involved in the, annual payments that they have to make or anything else.
Okay.
In this case, the payments would go directly to the bank.
Correct.
Stacy, over the term of the bond, what kind of accounting reports and will the city be faced with annually, other than the upfront cost, or charges for legal service and financial services?
Mayor, Jack, essentially there's nothing for the ongoing. If this was a housing project, it'd be a little bit different. You would get reports on the affordability that's linked to it, but with this type of project, you're not gonna have any required reporting, at least not that I'm aware of, so.
Just a single transaction.
So Stacy, what happens if Ham Lake says no?
Well, if Ham Lake says no, they have other options. They can go to other cities. So even though we talk about proximity, which is always preferred, there's not a nexus test for Nexus. I can't believe your name was Nexus. So they have the ability to go to other cities to find someone else that's willing to allow their BQ to be utilized for this. It happens routinely throughout the metro area of where they can actually go. I think the one thing that maybe Rhonda didn't state is that, if you guys chose not to do it, right? If they went and found somebody else that would do it other than you guys, you would still be required to give host approval. So, and that whole reason that that's out there that they have to be done is that they don't want developers shopping prices for fees, right? So, if you're gonna say no because they don't wanna come to you because your fee is too high, they just can't go to another place. You have to be able to allow them to do that.
Any other questions, comments?
Another very concise description, thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
At this time, Margaret, would you like to speak to anything? This is Margaret Vimont with Nexus.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So Nexus Family Healing has its home base in Minnesota, and for 50 years, this agency and organization has been dedicated to serving the mental health needs of youth and families. And we have deep end experience in residential. This is our commitment to identify where the gaps are in the mental health delivery system for youth, and then bringing our expertise to meet that gap. We're a large organization that has 9 agencies, and this deep end residential, which is what Cambria was built for, and the East Bethel site was designed beautifully to serve kids with very intensive mental health needs. We run 6 of those facilities in 4 states that are longer term, very intensive mental health, and then 2 shorter term facilities that we have built for communities in Minnesota when they were identifying that mental health need. This is a project that we've been interested in for, about the time that Cambria actually reached out to us before they closed and said that they knew that they were closing and were interested in having the work continue because of the dire need of youth in Minnesota for this high-end service. We know that it's a dire need because we've got these youth that are being stranded in emergency rooms and in some cases in detention because they have intensive mental health needs that foster care and other lower level care in communities can't serve. One of the reasons why it's taken us so long to say we're ready to do this is because Nexus is a very deliberate organization, not only in the ways that it serves clients and making sure that we have the expertise to provide the levels of clinical service that these kids need, but also we take a very careful look at sustainability. And this, the funding of this level of care called psychiatric residential treatment is something that the state has really wrestled with and figuring out how to have a rate system that allows organizations like ours to run a high quality system in a way that's financially sustainable by the state funding system. And so we have seen them go through many attempts to fix that system, and they now have gone through the process of negotiating our rate with us. We've been very careful to build in sustainable living wages for even the people in the direct entry care positions so that we can compete with workforce, and making sure that we have all of the clinical layers that we need to serve these kids. And the state has responded and been able to give us a rate that we know that we can do in a sustainable way. So with that, we enthusiastically pursued getting approved by the state for this. We're in the process of having that contract finalized at this time, and we're hoping to get the support that we need from entities like East Bethel and Ham Lake and others to proceed and restore that facility to the reason why it was built in the first place, which was to meet the needs of Minnesota youth. I'm happy to answer any questions about Nexus or our design or our qualifications to do so.
Where is the sale process at, if I may ask? Whereabouts?
Do you want to, our CFO is here, so maybe whenever I was talked about finance things, he gets itchy, so I wondered if maybe like you can see that. Is that all right if Scott comes up?
Yeah.
I don't talk about clinical things either.
That's right, exactly right.
Hello, good evening. We have a signed letter of intent in place right now, and we are negotiating an asset purchase agreement. And I feel pretty comfortable that we're going to have the asset purchase agreement signed within the next couple of weeks. So it's going along quite well. We had a lot of heavy lifting in the letter of intent stage, and we've got a really strong document to move forward.
So if everything goes well by your timetable, when are you looking to open the doors again?
So ideally, our funding process here, our financing process, is about a 3-month process, which gets us to August 1st. If we can close on August 1st and take possession of the building on August 1st, we have a 4-month ramp up, which is hiring and training, to take our first client on December 1st.
Okay.
And this is gonna be half the kids at Canby Hills is, right? 30 kids or 32 kids?
Yeah, our capacity will be 40 kids.
40 kids, okay.
Right, we're using most of the bedrooms as single rooms.
Yep.
Our clinical model would indicate that.
Okay.
So the capacity would be 40. We have a very slow ramp up because we know that we need to stabilize at each level before we actually open another unit. So it will actually take us a full 18 months before we open that 4th unit.
Okay.
And fill the last.
Do we have any numbers on what it's gonna cost, our districts or our schools or anything like that for the funding of staffing? I mean, are we gonna be responsible for how much, and do we know how much, and?
So I know that the superintendent and the school board chair would be speaking out of my expertise about that. The only thing that I understand from our other residential facilities is that when youth come into a district and the home district is educating them, that then the funding for their education comes to the district that's educating them. But I have just gotten to the end of my detailed expertise about how that happens. In our other campuses, the school district is providing an on-site school system just like would be here. So I don't know if you want to have others in the room that are more knowledgeable about that speak to how that happens.
Yes.
What would be customary is that we support that because we've got trained direct staff and clinicians that are on site, of course, all the time. And so they can give support to the classrooms so that if there's behavioral issues, that we can have that support. So it's not as if, even though it's on site, we don't disappear with our support for the educational staff and really take their lead as they're offering the educational program. And then there's ample space in the facility, as you may be aware, to offer the educational programming there.
As I said when we met here at City Hall a few weeks ago, I think you folks are ideally suited for this. I mean, I think we could find a better potential operator of the facility. And everybody wants to see it put in, well, not everybody, but a majority of people, I'm sure, want to see a very nice asset put it to good use. And the concerns of the school district and who else might be a financing partner for you are realities that are To be surmounted at some point, but that's what you guys do, is surmount obstacles, so,
We appreciate the confidence.
yeah. Speaking of which.
Come on, yeah, come on up.
Well, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I don't have anything prepared, but I will introduce myself again. I'm Karsten Anderson, the superintendent. I'm also a resident of East Bethel. On my way to work every morning, I drive by the beautiful facility in this beautiful town. I've toured it twice. I've met with representatives of Nexus, and they do seem like a high-quality organization trying to do important work. So I want to lay that out there. The school district, however, does have significant concerns in several areas. First of all, we have a lot of unknowns. And just like Nexus likes to do their work diligently before they sign on the documents, I need to know information before we can be supportive of the project. We have a lot of changes in state law that may be forthcoming. We'll know a lot more about that here in May as the session ends. We have a lot of questions about the particular needs of students that we would be serving. Do they need one-on-one paras? How many kids will we have in a classroom as we're providing those educational services? We have a lot of questions about finance as well. So anytime there are unknowns like this, it's my responsibility to try to get information so we can cross some things off. If I could just briefly go into some specific areas. First of all, the provider. The school district is obligated to provide these mandated services in terms of education. It could be contracted out to another entity like 916, Intermediate School District 916, which was the original plan. The problem is that they would require us to be a member school district. And in doing so, we would be obligated to a lease levy, not only for this particular project, but for all of their projects. That's how cooperatives work in the school world. You become a member and then you share those lease levy responsibilities. I don't have a specific number as far as what that would cost our taxpayers, including taxpayers in East Bethel, but I would imagine it's hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Reason I don't know the number is that 916 is not interested in working with us because we're not members. So it's difficult to know exactly what that cost would be. So the provider is one big issue. Another big issue is staffing. And we have significant challenges in fulfilling our current staff needs, including the needs for special education services for kids. We don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough education assistants. And so I'm worried, I lose sleep at night, worried about how we're going to staff this particular program. And Nexus and I would agree that, if Nexus comes here, they're going to have to provide competitive wages. Well, that also impacts our ability to keep and find our own employees serving our own kids. So that's a huge issue for us. Also finances. I know that Nexus will charge us rent for using the facility for school-related purposes, but I don't know the amount. I need to know the amount. That is critically important. I'm not going to rent an apartment here in East Bethel without knowing the cost. And it's just critically important to me. I need to know that information. I know you're going through some financial processes here. You don't know the rates, you don't know all the details. I need at least to know a range. Is it over $300,000 per year or not? That kind of thing. If it's only a couple $1,000 a year for the whole works, that's one thing. But if it's $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, then I have concerns about how we're going to pay for that as a school or assess our local taxpayers. So again, we just need time to be able to figure that out with Nexus and with the state It's an important service, and everything I hear about Nexus is good in terms of the quality of service, but as a school district and for our local taxpayers, we need more time and more information. So, do you have any questions for me?
I assume in the months coming up, you'll be meeting with Nexus and getting answers to all your questions.
Yeah, and they've been very good to work with. I mean, we've met with Nexus, we've exchanged some emails. One of the big missing pieces, though, is how much rent we would be expected to pay. And that part I really need to find out for sure.
All right. When you figure out all the information that you need, can you update the city as to?
You bet. What we will do is after we get that information, we will run it by the state of Minnesota because they have some unique funding streams for care and treatment programs, and this is a care and treatment program. And the only problem is that it's also related to our own financial position at the school district. And so if I have that information, then we'll run it by the state first, and then I could certainly share it with Jack again.
Yeah, just to kind of get a sense of where the school district's at and if you've solved the questions that you need solving, and just keep us updated.
If I could just add one more thing, you know, the finances are very complicated in the school setting, especially for care and treatment programs. When I started the meeting recently with the state, we went through the meeting and I was feeling really confident that this is going to work out just fine. We can file a general appeal to the state and they'll pay us back for those costs. Then at the end of the meeting, the expert from the state realized that we were under something called a hold harmless provision, and that kind of raised the concern level significantly. So we just need time to sort all this out.
I'm glad that you are taking the precautions that you're thinking about, because it's important to myself as well that you do check out every avenue. So, I mean, there's a lot of money involved here. And just listening to you talk, I mean, you're having a tough time filling your positions for teachers as well. And then another one to come into and try to fill 90-some jobs. I don't know how it's gonna happen.
Yeah, we
But
have
I'm glad you're
teachers,
checking out what you're doing.
education assistants, cooks, custodians, you know,
Everything.
the same positions that Nexus will need to hire as well.
Right. So I appreciate you checking into it, definitely.
And again, go ahead.
And I do have a concern when you say it's gonna cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, when I'm hearing that there's no risk to this city. That's a huge red flag for me. Anything that attaches cost to the taxpayers of the city is gonna be questioned. And I hope, you know, I'm glad you're telling us what you're telling us. But I don't understand, because we went from one portion of no risk to the city, and when I say the city, I mean, I'm including the people who pay the taxes and pay the bills in this place. And then we have $100,000 plus for various, I'm not sure. And then you mentioned we don't have a cost on rent. So we're going to be funding something that we're going to be renting and paying for with our school system dollars, and it could impact our taxes here. Every piece of information that you can get regarding every dime that's being spent is going to be greatly appreciated in this decision.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize that I'm new as far as starting a care and treatment program. I've worked with several in the past, so I'm new to this. But you know, I think it's important for me to do my due diligence to figure this out. So what I can say to you, Tim, is that potentially there's a significant impact to the school. Potentially there's an impact to local taxpayers, or not. Because it depends on some other factors that are going to take significant time for us to figure out.
Okay.
So I want to be fair to Nexus too, that we're willing to work with Nexus to kind of iron these details out. But the first thing I think that's really important is know what the rent would be, so we can determine if we're going to get state reimbursement for that, or if it has to go on local taxpayers and those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it, and I'm sorry I wasn't as concise as the previous
No, that's fine.
speakers, but I do appreciate the
Oh,
opportunity.
you're plenty concise.
Thanks.
Anybody else wanna, got anybody else that wanna come up and speak, or? Got everything then?
Well, I think what we need to do is decide if we want to discuss this at our May 8th or May 22nd meeting, to call for the public hearing for the issuance of the bonds. And the question I guess I would have, if we do this and we start this process, and the school district has serious objections to this, what's the status of the project then?
My exact thoughts, I make sure everything, all the bases are covered.
I don't think we should put the cart in front of the horse with that part of it, start the bond issues when we don't even know what's in front of us. I mean, Karsten there told us that he don't even know what the rent is, so why would we start doing all these other, get the wheels spinning if we don't know what's going on?
Well, I think that's a critical part of the whole thing, and I think before we would approve anything, I think that's one thing that we would have to know, but,
Right.
that's why I'm asking. This is what's before us tonight, is to start the process of the conduit financing issue. You've heard some concerns from the school district, so,
Big concerns.
you know, we just have to coordinate the timing of this so that everything hopefully would work out good, but.
Well, what are your thoughts on going ahead with it?
Well, I think we may need a little bit more information from the school district. I want to make sure that that's not going to cause a concern. I know there was some concern last time with Cambia. There were some things that weren't accounted for, and the school district was placed in a little bit of a precarious position.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Again, though, I also feel too that the school district's position on this is probably going to influence how this project goes forward, because like Karsten said, ISD 16, I think is not, they're not an alternative in this whole process as being the provider. It's what I understand. That's the school district that was involved in this last time, so I think it's gonna fall on the St. Francis School District to provide the educational components on this. And if I'm misspeaking, correct me, because.
Might we speak to the rent timing issue?
Yes.
I also have a question of what kind of timetable are we under to get this accomplished?
I think Scott will address
Yeah.
this right now.
I can address both those questions, thank you. This is the first time I've met superintendent here, so I have a lot of, I desire to meet with him and figure out this rent. This is not gonna be a problem as far as I'm concerned. We'll negotiate something that is beneficial to both us and to the school district, okay? And my original thought was to wait until we had a signed purchase agreement, which kind of drives this entire process. We're very close to that. I would be okay meeting with the superintendent this week or next week to have these discussions, because I don't want this to hold it up. To your question about timing, timing is very imperative. We really need to close on this by August 1st, so we can take possession and get the 4 months to train, to hire and train. If we can't do that, then we'll have to push this out past the first of the year into the spring because of trying to hire during the holidays. And then the referrals for our clients from the holidays are not strong either. So the piece of time to keep this thing moving to get to a close of August 1 is very, very important to us.
So with August 1st being the projected closing date right now, how long, and I assume that you need the conduit bond in order to close, how long does it take a conduit bond to go from saying, okay, we're gonna do it, to the transaction of where we get the money?
I'm relying on the experts, Dorsey and Whitney here. I've been told that it's 90 days. By August 1st, the way it's working right now, we can get there. I'm not the one to answer the question, though. If there were delays in the approval process, what would happen? I would defer to you for that.
And if I could ask a question, in terms of this timing issue, I noticed that you'd like to have some direction by next Monday. we could also put this off until the 22nd of May for the city to call the public hearing, if that's the direction we want to go, and still meet that June 12th, 14-day timeline. Would 3 weeks give enough time to get back with some basic information regarding your negotiations with the school board on some of these issues? It would give us some more comfort level maybe in going ahead with considering the conduit bond financing.
I think the only issue, as I heard, with that impacts Nexus is the negotiation of the lease. The other items that were brought up sound more like school district challenges in terms of hiring. But in terms of the lease, again, I can have those conversations here this week and next week. We want to make this work, so I would not want to let that derail this project.
I think that gives another 2 or 3 weeks for them to work on that detail. They can get back to us, and I think to still meet with their timelines, if the city calls for this public hearing at our meeting on the 22nd, still gives time to have it on June the 12th. So that gives a little bit more time to get us some more information.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Thanks, Scott.
Thank
So,
you.
and if you have any information that you can report back to me, I'll keep the council informed, and then we can shoot for that May 22nd date possibly
Absolutely.
to look at going forward with this. Everything's in order.
I've got your number now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what kind of direction do you need on this, Jack?
The direction I guess I need is Karsten and Scott will kind of keep us appraised at where we are on this, and then we can present this information to the council. I'll update you in emails. If we have some more information, we can briefly discuss it at our May the 8th meeting, and we can tentatively schedule it for discussion at the 22nd. So I think we got plenty of time, and even worse comes to worse, if it was put off another little bit, we could get this done maybe by the end of June. I know they're shooting for the 12th, but this gives a little bit more time for them to get some of their questions answered and give us some more information.
If we were to go ahead and have the public hearing and all publish the notice and everything, it doesn't obligate us to go ahead with the conduit bonds. It's just,
No, we could go ahead and have the public hearing,
Yeah.
and then we could vote on that.
I've been through these things before, not the same thing, but, where you're trying to pull all the loose threads
Yeah.
together, and at some point, you just gotta grab one of
Yeah.
them and tie it off.
Yeah.
I mean, you just fix something, just as a start, to the process, otherwise, it's just, loose ends flying around. So, I think we're well assured by our bond counsel that we're not exposing the city to a financial risk by issuing the conduit bonds, and I think that was the big question. The second question from the city's standpoint is the tax risk through whatever is worked out with the school system, which is that's our other risk to control or manage, however you wanna put it. So, I think we could probably go ahead with the public hearing and all, and at least have something, at least say, okay, we did the public hearing, and nobody objected, so if it is gonna happen, at least we're prepared to do our end of it, yeah.
So
That's
do we
just
want
my
to,
thoughts.
do we want to schedule calling for the public hearing at our May the 8th meeting? The public hearing then wouldn't be until June the 12th. So then you should know everything there is to know about,
Yeah.
hopefully, the impacts on the
Yeah,
school system.
It makes sense to me.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm wrong, tell me.
No,
Doesn't bother me to be
I think
wrong.
that's perfectly logical.
Is that a okay timeline from Nexus's point and work with everybody
Darcy?
else? Okay, the answers were in the affirmative from the audience, then, so.
Okay.
You need a motion of some kind?
No, just direction, we'll have this on our May 8th city council meeting.
Yeah.
And it'll be just the call for the public hearing on June the 12th. There won't be any other action taken other than that.
Right.
And they'll take care of the advertising, and hopefully all the details can be, or most of them can be worked out between now and June the 12th.
Okay.
I
Thanks
hope they
again.
are.
Thanks again to everybody.
Good luck, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 5, Jack, 2024 Parks Capital Improvement.
I'll just show it up here if you want me to.
Empty right out.
Oh, you got mine?
Hmm. Let me just show the, oh, you got it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is item 5.0, the 2024 through 2028 Parks Capital Improvement Plan. The Parks Commission prepares an annual capital improvement plan which updates needs and costs for proposed projects, evaluates priorities, and establishes funding for these works for the coming year and for each of the subsequent years for a 5-year period. This plan is presented to the City Council for their approval and used in the preparation of the 2024 budget. Attached is the 2024-2028 Park CIP developed from discussions at the March 13th and April 11th Park Commission meeting. Approval of the plan only commits the city for projects identified in 2024. Projects beyond 2024 are for planning purposes and will be reevaluated annually for funding prioritization during the capital improvement planning process. In your packet there, attachment 1 is the one we have from the Parks Commission, the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. And attachment 2 is our open space plan. The fiscal impact for this project, the budget includes a general fund transfer of $100,000 for park capital improvement projects for 2024 and is subject to City Council approval. It is anticipated that the park dedication fees from developers will provide an additional $40,000 of the Parks Acquisition Development Fund for 2024. The Park Commission voted unanimously to recommend the attached 2024 through 2028 Parks Capital Improvement Plan to the City Council for their review at tonight's meeting. This isn't going.
The playground equipment in 25, where's that going?
It's not going full
I
screen.
got it here.
So on your first page is the Park Acquisition and Development Fund. The funding for these projects comes from development. This is what we voted on at our last meeting for the park dedication fees. The sources are, to our best estimate, they can be significantly higher or they can be zero. So a lot of times with these projects, if we don't have the funding, we just push them down a year. They're kind of placeholders. So for 2024, we're looking at a shade structure for Booster West. This would be a large canopy type structure out by the fourplex to be used by fans of the athletic softball and baseball games that are taking place there. It's been requested from us, from families, to get out of the sun, especially on weekend tournaments when we have hundreds and hundreds of people out at these events. So that we have $50,000 budgeted for that. We don't have anything specific for 2025 yet. Part of what we've been looking at for 2025, 2026 and beyond is the need for a project in that new development area down near Viking and Highway 65.
Hey, Nate, I got one question. I think I heard you say 40,000?
Correct.
It's wrote 60,000.
In the write-up, yeah, that was
So is
changed,
it-
that was changed. We're looking at
Supposed to be
40,000.
40?
Yeah. And like I said, those can be extremely variable numbers on there.
Okay, thanks.
For your lights down there in Booster West and 28, is that electric and everything? Is that just the lights, or is that your electric and
That's an estimate from Musco, with current values. That includes putting the
Everything.
poles in, running
Okay,
power, all that.
okay.
Yeah. It's all phase 3 power out to that area, so we have power out there
Yeah,
already.
because they're gonna have to run a separate transformer for that field, won't they? Or can they go
Yes.
off the existing one?
That's a good question. I'm not sure right
Okay,
now.
okay.
The next item down is the Parks Capital Fund. This one is funded from transfers from the general fund, and they're not requesting any changes to that transfer amount. We've been kind of slowly ramping that back up, and they've kind of left it at that value for right now. For 2024, they have a big project planned for Coon Lake Beach. That is the oldest playground equipment we have in the city. It was secondhand playground equipment from a different park that was transferred down there. And there's a skateboard park at Maynard Peterson Park. That was secondhand equipment that was transferred there as well. So we're looking at probably somewhere around $50,000 for the actual playground equipment, and then some other site improvements, and then some items to be determined for what's going to take place at that skateboard park. I should also say too, all these items will come back to the council in 2024 before they're actually purchased. So right now, we're just approving the plan, approving the funding, and then you will all see it again when it comes up time to actually make the purchase on most of the stuff here.
Nate, is there any grants for stuff like this, or is it just?
There is grants available from the DNR that is the biggest one. Sometimes the playgrounding companies have grants too, but most of the stuff that we buy is on a state contract, so it's at a very reduced price, and the grants come up to be about the same price. But the Minnesota DNR has a number of matching grants. They're competitive. We could apply for one. They're usually for like a major project. We had one, the city used it for Booster East a long time ago to help do the development in Booster East. They're 50% matches. Tim and I and the Park Commission talked about it at a couple meetings.
That'd be cool.
So is the stuff going on at Coon Lake Beach gonna be new this time?
This will be new stuff.
It
correct.
will?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
It's
Hot dog.
actually pretty hard to reuse playground equipment. We
Sounds
can't
like you
sell
did.
it. Most of the time, we have donated to a group called, I forget the name of it. Do you remember, Jack? What?
No, but
They take it and take it out of the country to other areas, and it's a nonprofit, and they reassemble it there. So we've done that on a couple of our, 3 or 4 of our parks, we've done that. For 2025, all they have on there is another chunk of the Baton Trail segment. And then moving on through 26, 27, and 28, that's where they're starting to look at the development of a new park in that part of the city down there, like I said, kind of down on that Viking, where the Viking golf course is. Jack, if you want to go to the map page, it kind of highlights that area that they're looking at. So that entire green shaded area, we do not have any city parks, and it's 20% of the city. And there's going to be significant development down in that area, and we're looking at the Park Commission as some type of a little bit more larger scale park in that area, trying to get away from the small neighborhood parks and focus more on larger parks that can have more visitors.
So more like Booster rather than.
Booster, maybe small, maybe a little bit smaller than Booster, but along those lines rather than neighborhood parks. Kind of what we found at the Park Commission at, East Bethel is a lot of the developments have acreage lots, so the need for an acreage park isn't as big. Some of the houses have playgrounds in their yard that are bigger than some of our city playgrounds. The places that we see a lot of use are like Coon Lake Beach, where it's a little bit higher density, where there's not as much room, and like Whispering Aspen Playground gets a lot of use, where it's smaller lot sizes, and whatever happens kind of with this Elevage area down in there, Viking Preserve area. Another focus that this Park Commission has is trails. They have done two surveys in the past. They were 2012 or 13, I think was the last one. But the biggest request from the residents at that time was walking and biking paths. And then the second one was athletic facilities for organized sports. So that's where a lot of the focus has kind of been on, is upgrading Booster Park and then trying to look at trail connections. We do have some new trails going in with the Elevage property. We did do a portion with the Sand Hill Crane project down there too. But there is kind of a general outline for the trails on this comp plan map too. Anoka County has a regional trail that runs east to west through the city, basically following, it's the blue line on there, following County Road 74. That will be funded through them when they do highway improvements, but that's a long ways out for our city. And they do have another small little trail that catches the corner of the city and the southeast corner going past Coon Lake Beach that connects Lexington Avenue up to Martin Lake. That little blue dotted line there in the corner is the other portion. Is there any questions on any of the project that they have proposed here on the park, either one of the plans?
As far as Elevage, the way I understand it, they're gonna have their own, aren't they? Private, so it doesn't have nothing to do with us.
They are gonna have public trails.
Oh, they are?
The trails will be public.
Okay.
There's a private clubhouse.
Clubhouse, yeah.
Clubhouse, yeah, they
Yeah.
got pool
Okay.
and things like that, yeah.
So there's gonna be trails that go through there.
Yep.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And then we
And then
kind
they'll all
of,
tie in with Viking and
yeah, when we went through
Mr.
the,
Osborne does his property, they all tie in, right?
yeah, the preliminary process, we spec'd out some connection spots with Elevage to connect to maybe some future development in Viking Golf Course.
Okay.
Yeah, Osborne Properties, yep.
Questions, comments?
I think it's looking pretty good. I think a larger new park on the south end would be something to look forward to, something nice.
Just as an example, just to point out what Nate's saying, where the cursor is right here, we have a city park here, we have a city park at Coon Lake Beach, but there's one over here at Norson Manor, but in this area right here, it's devoid of any city park facilities, and there will be probably quite a bit of residential growth there in the next 10 years, so as part of the next major development that includes some acreage, we hope to be able to negotiate a donation of a site there for a park, and some of it's going to be centrally located to Viking Preserve, the apartments, the new developments here, and it'll serve that area that's currently lacking in any of those facilities.
Well, it's looking good.
That looks good, Nate.
So this will be included with the budget process,
Yeah.
with the final budget. Both these schedules will be in that packet for you to review at that time too, so if anything comes up in the meantime.
And what we'll do, we'll present this at the next council meeting, just for approval of this preliminary plan for budgetary purposes. And then we'll include that in their preliminary budget. Adjustments can be made to that as we proceed through that process, even up until December of this year.
Nate, pass on council's thanks to the Park Commission and
Will do.
for all their hard work and their time.
Moving on, 2024 roads capital improvement plan.
Item 6, this is the 2024 to 2028 Roads Capital Improvement Plan. Staff prepares an annual capital improvement plan which updates needs and costs of proposed projects, evaluates priorities, and establishes fundings for these works for the coming year and for each of the subsequent years for a 5-year period. The plan is presented to the City Council for their approval and used in the preparation of the 2024 budget. Attached is the draft 2024 to 2028 Roads Capital Improvement Plan. Approval of the plan only commits the city for the projects identified for 2024. Projects beyond 2024 are for planning purposes and will be reevaluated annually for funding prioritization during the capital improvement planning process. The budget includes a proposed general fund transfer increase of $50,000 for road improvement projects for 2024, subject to City Council approval. Staff recommends the attached capital improvement plan to City Council for their consideration and approval. So this one's kind of set up the same way. There's two separate funds. Fund 402, Jack, if you want to scroll down. Is that also on mine still?
It's on yours
Okay.
now. Trying to pull
Not
this.
sure why this is, won't go full screen, but. So Fund 402 is our municipal state aid fund. These projects are funded money that we get from the state of Minnesota that come from gas tax, license tax, that type of thing. We're allocated an amount each year. Right now, our annual amount is $641,430. These monies can only be used on municipal state aid roads, so these are our major connector roads. We have a map that lays out all of our MSA roads, but these are basically your higher speed roads, higher volume roads that connect typically between either the state highway or two county roads. For 2024, we're showing a negative beginning balance on there. With the state aid, it's kind of a different funding mechanism, but we can advance fund our allocated amount up to $3 million ahead of time, and that's what we've been doing for a number of years to, basically we're getting the money ahead of time with no interest on it to fund these projects, hopefully when they're cheaper than when they come due. It's a pretty common practice for most cities, so that's why we're showing a negative balance on there. The balance on the 2024 includes, we're gonna have a project coming up to the council for University Avenue, a joint project with the city of Oak Grove. And that, I think our portion of that was about $500,000, maybe $600,000. So that's kind of figured into that beginning balance. For 2024, we're looking at Davenport Street reconstruction. So this would be Sims Road coming off of the highway, going back behind over towards the ice arena, and then back out to 65 on 209th, kind of that horseshoe. It would widen the road out, put concrete curb and gutter in there. That road's been on the schedule for a number of years. We've been kind of kicking it down. On the map there, it's the green portion. That's our MSA project for 2024. For 2025, we do not have anything planned. We'll allow that fund to kind of build back up again. In 2026, we're looking at Polk and Jackson, which is the road that goes by the school. And then Klondike going back out to 65 would be a mill and overlay with maybe a couple spots that would have to be reclaimed. $750,000 for the Polk and Jackson portion and $125,000 for the Klondike Drive portion. And then for 27 and 28, we do not have any projects planned right now, but those can always be changed going forward too. That amount we get from the state of Minnesota varies from year to year as well. It's kind of been close to the 600, between 625 and 650 for the past number of years, so I'm kind of anticipated to stay in that area. It's based on traffic counts on our MSA roads. They have a funding mechanism that calculates how we get that amount, but we're planning on that kind of staying at that, somewhere in that range, so. Is there any questions on that first one?
I just have a question, Nate. So what, do you gotta apply for that money, or is that, how do they determine that?
So at the last meeting, Craig, our city engineer, yes, you have to send in a request for advance funding. So that was the one, we have, our last meeting, we sent in a request for the $700,000. That was to help pay for, we're actually back paying 181st Avenue, which is from Acapulco going to the west. Mm-hmm. And then to help pay for this University Avenue project that's coming up. So yeah, they advance fund that, and at times the state of Minnesota freezes that advance funding, which they had done that the last couple of years over COVID, and they're letting us reapply for that now too.
Cool.
And Nate, I meant to ask you at our last roads or our Parks Commission meeting, we have a lot of gravel roads in this city, quite a few. I found that out campaigning. Who makes the decision when and if they get blacktopped, and who has the brunt of, who has to pay for that?
So the city's policy, we have about 15 miles of gravel roads. I think it's right around 30 actual gravel roads still, so it's a pretty significant portion of our city is still gravel. Our city policy is that it has to, have to petition to pave that road from the neighborhood, the residents, and the neighborhood pays the brunt of that project. The city changed their policy a few years back to help kick in, to try and get some more people more neighborhoods involved in wanting to do this, they would go up to $100,000 to help cover the cost of the project, because we have a number of costs in the road already for drainage, and we resurface with class 5, so we'd kind of use that cost and put it towards blacktop. It very rarely happens because of the, you have to have a majority of the people that want to do it, and they have a hard time doing that.
Okay.
And it's assessed to the property owners basically because they're increasing their property value. If you had two developments that were identical, that were built at the same time, one had paved roads, one had gravel roads, a house on the paved portion would cost more because that developer has the cost of that blacktop when they made the road, and that's passed on to the price of the lot and subsequently to the price of the house. So.
And the cost of those assessments can vary greatly depending on how many residents live on that section of road. The last petition we had was back in 2018, I believe. It's for Xylite and Zumbrota down here off 221st. And the assessment cost on that was gonna be $17,000 per lot for the paving. I think it involved about 40 houses, but it's about 2 miles of road, so it's quite expensive. As Nate said, you know, we'll go in there and we'll do all the drain pipe work, any ditch work, figure out the number of class 5 applications over a number of years and credit that to the cost of the project.
Is there any credit for the taxes those houses have paid through the years?
No, because even though they're paying to keep that dirt road portion up, the dirt road portions are still maintained. We run the motor grader there probably, some of them twice a week in certain high traffic condition areas. Sometimes once every 2 weeks, we snow plow them, do the ditch work, class 5 applications, so that's what their taxes are paying for maintenance on those roads.
And Klondike, you do once a week,
Well, sometimes twice a
or
week.
twice a week on Klondike here, yeah.
And some of those roads, dust control methods as well.
Speaking of dust control, did you happen to check out the soap
I
stop?
did look into it. I read a research paper from MnDOT. I can't find anybody that does it around our area.
No.
It is a viable option for it, though. What it kind of mentioned was it's hard to get enough quantity, and you have to be close to a supplier for it to be feasible. It sounds like it's used a lot in more in the farm country. Sugar beets is another one up in the Red River Valley. It sounds like that's used up there a lot. It doesn't have the environmental effects that chlorides have. It's better for the environment, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just looking out for the environment.
Yeah.
Actually, I just came across it in my past life in agribusiness, that's why.
Sure.
Oh, looks good, Nate.
So that's the MSA fund. That's, like I said, that's funded through money that we get from the state of Minnesota. This next page is the street capital fund. This is funded through the general fund transfer. And let me scroll down to it on here. So currently, we are transferring $500,000 to our budget, and looking out at how this is gonna play out, we're severely underfunding some of these road projects. Our needs are getting higher than what we're funding. So we're requesting a $50,000 increase here, and then another one in 2026. I kinda went out and compared some of our neighboring cities and what they have for roads and needs. And we're pretty low compared to a lot of other cities, so. For 2024, the funding sources are the general fund transfer, and then we have a couple of assessments that the city's already paid for that we're getting payments on. So that's the $28,000, the $34,000, and the $3,000. Each year we have a number of projects that we do on the city streets that we budget for. They're called the North Metro JPA maintenance projects. We're gonna budget $100,000 for that. That's crack sealing, seal coating, restriping of the streets. For 2024, we're looking at redoing Edmar, Vickers, Breezy Point, Yalta, and 189th. So this is the development on the north side of Coon Lake. In your packet, it would be my computer's so slow up here. It's the green portion here. If you get a chance to drive over there, you can take a look at the roads. They're in really bad shape. We've got a number, this year was, like I said before, awful on our pothole plan, but for 2025, we have quite a few projects planned. They would be Hidden Haven, both sides of Polk Drive, so we call it Hidden Haven East and Hidden Haven West. Both of those need overlays and then some drainage reconstruction work. And then Cedar Brook, which is the development just south of Hidden Haven. So those are green on your map too. I know the map in your packet's probably pretty small. It's hard to get 48 square miles onto an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Excuse me, those are blue for 2025. For 2026, we are looking at a couple different developments, London and 225th, 226. So these are off of Sandy Drive. On your map, they were kind of a dark blue color, along with a joint project with the city of Linwood for Sunset Drive. That one was we're predicting around $600,000 for that project. $300,000 would be our share. For 2027, Quincy Street off of 221st, the Rain Tree development, these are the yellow ones on your map, and 224th and 225th, which is the roads right behind City Hall here. And then for 2028, two more developments, Norsland Manor, which is kind of the pink color on your map, and then Rendova Naples. It's a development on the north side of Coon Lake off of Viking Boulevard. And each time, at the end of 2026, we're really getting that fund down. Same with the end of 2025. In comparison, I was looking at some other cities around us. Ham Lake has 140 miles of roads. We're at about 135 right now. Their general fund transfer is 1.1 million for their roads. Oak Grove is at 600,000. They have significantly less miles of roads than us, so something we're gonna have to probably have some hard talks with going forward on how to fund some of these projects, because the needs are there. City of Ramsey has 180 miles. I know they're a little bit more dense, but they have some other costs, but they have $8 million budgeted for 1 year of road projects, so we're trying to get by with what we can, but, and we can patch and maintain them, but, a lot of these are gonna require reconstructions at some point.
You can only patch the patches for so long.
And it happens year after year. It takes a couple months to get through everything. I think this plan tackles right now our biggest needs, but we're gonna see more pop up as we go forward too over the next 5 years. Any specific questions on there or any other projects the council sees that we need to address before we send this to council for the budget?
You're actually gonna get to do Sunrise, huh? Linwood's gonna go in with you on that one?
Well, we've had initial discussions with them. That's what we've kind of set it for, yeah.
Okay.
They have a different funding mechanism over there for their roads. They do not get the MSA money that we get because they're not a city. They have access to some township money. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
So their budget's pretty small. There again, we're just looking at 2024 too for the budget for this year, and then all these projects would come back before the council for approval before they begin in the following year too. So this is kind of a planning document that kind of lays everything out and where our needs are and what we need to kind of start looking at addressing.
Looks good, man.
Any questions? If anybody ever wanted to take a look at any of these roads too, I'm available. We could go for a drive on a one-on-one basis and take a look at some of the projects too.
questions, comments?
No, sounds good. Thank you,
All right,
Nate,
that's all
for,
I have. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Nate.
Jack, number 7, SRWMO JPA and fundraising formula update.
Okay, this is a long report in your packet. I'm gonna hit the high spots. If you have any questions or wanna go into any additional detail, let me know. We talked about this at a meeting, I believe last month. There's an issue going forward in the Sunrise River WMO with the city of Ham Lake that they want to have their cost reduced because they think they get no benefit out of the WMO. The city of East Bethel, Columbus, and Linwood take exception to this. We think that they do because of their access and the fact that Coon Lake is in a portion of Ham Lake. The biggest point of contention between Ham Lake and the rest of the members of the Sunrise is the funding formula. Ham Lake thinks that the operating costs should be made part of the whole budget and split proportionately, while the other 3 cities think that the operating costs are the things that each person should bear split equally, because that's just what it takes to keep the lights on, the audits, the legal fees, office supplies, and insurance, things of those nature. We've had several meetings with Ham Lake and the 3 of us. Ham Lake has come to the position that they'll only accept one alternative, and that's to cut their cost by about $2,000. In doing so, though, that affects the cost of everybody else. It means ours go up. So we've come to the point, or had at the last meeting, where there's essentially 5 options that we considered. One of them was just to keep the status quo as it is and move forward, but Ham Lake will not. That's unacceptable to Ham Lake. We could request engage in mediation with this. However, mediation's expensive, it's non-binding, and wouldn't even guarantee an agreement. The other is a compromise by a non-mediation discussion between the cities, but that would mean granting several concessions to Ham Lake in terms of the funding formula. The only benefit to that is it may resolve the issue, and we can move forward. However, there's no guarantee that we wouldn't be in this same discussion next year. This is the second time in the past 7 years that we've had this issue and discussion with Ham Lake. The other thing would be just to concede to Ham Lake's demands, which I don't think anybody wants to do that. And the other alternative is dissolve and reform the Sunrise River WMO with only Columbus, East Bethel, and Linwood. We did get a letter from the attorney that's representing the Sunrise River WMO late Friday afternoon, which I sent out to everyone. I think that he thinks and is leaning that dissolution may be the best solution. The Linwood Town Board met on April the 11th and said that's the only solution that they want to deal with. They're getting frustrated with the negotiations that have gone forward, and they just want to go ahead and form a new Sunrise River WMO with 3 members. The city of Columbus was comfortable with going with this option 3, which was making certain concessions to Ham Lake on the funding formula, but they say they're also open to dissolution. So it kind of brings it on us on what we want to do as to which direction this is going to go. So the question tonight before us is whether we want to dissolve the Sunrise River WMO as it is and form a new Sunrise River WMO with just 3 members, or compromise with Ham Lake and use their favored funding formula, which will increase our cost. It'll increase Linwood's cost significantly. I think it'll lower Columbus's cost a little bit. And essentially, that's what our options are. But again, there's no guarantee that Ham Lake may come back again and say, you know, we're not satisfied with this. Dissolution and starting over again would be the only guarantee that we have, that we probably won't face this issue. So to dissolve it, what we'd have to do is 2 of the 3 members would have to vote to dissolve. and then the next step would be to reform the Sunrise River WMO and do a new joint powers agreement. There would be legal cost in that. We don't have a number as to what they are now. But we do know going forward, if we do the others, there'll still be cost with that. So either way, it's gonna be an expense. I don't have the numbers for it, because we just got the email from the attorney last Friday. But, it would be nice if we could express some form of direction we might wanna take going forward with this. So we can start this process. We need to get a budget for the Sunrise River WMO, and we're kind of at an impasse right now.
So with that option of dissolving and reforming, what happens to Ham Lake section? And can we even do that without Ham Lake section, since it's in the watershed?
Well, Ham Lake section then would either be taken over by the county, or Bowser would set up another district for them to go in with that portion of the watershed. That's one of the drawbacks to dissolution, is then if you have a project with Coon Lake, you're dealing with two different organizations that manage it. So I think Linwood is fairly firm in their stance, you know, that they wanna go there, they wanna go their own way with the dissolution. Columbus can go either way. I don't know that that's gonna be a major issue in dealing with two issues with Coon Lake in the future. It's something we just have to experiment with. There's been no experience on that, so there's no basis for any judgment on what we'd encounter.
Yeah, 'cause none of them, Bowser doesn't, want them to go, Coon Creek doesn't want them, the county doesn't want them, so. I don't know, I mean, they're gonna have to be in some kind of watershed, so.
You talking
I-
about Ham Lake?
Ham Lake, yeah, they kinda holding us hostage, so.
I think if dissolution were to happen, some entity would have to take on that southern portion
Yeah,
of
I mean, they,
Yeah,
Coon
they
Lake,
would, yeah.
because,
you know, they could always come back, if they did get out, and, you know, they could always come back, so. They have
Yeah,
the option of coming back.
if it was dissolved, Ham Lake would either have to be taken over by the county for that portion of the watershed, which the county wants no part of it. I mean, they might do it temporarily, but they're gonna put pressure on Ham Lake to get out of that as quickly as possible. Or Bowser would step in and finally issue a directive, which is what we've said all along needs to be done. They need to step up and say, this is what's gonna happen. We're the group that oversees this. So you gotta stay in this watershed and you gotta work with everybody in it.
That's where I'm kinda disappointed with Bowser, Jack, they just don't,
No.
they don't wanna jump in there and say, this is the way it's gonna be, they're kinda beating around the bush, so.
Yeah, I'm, you know, the county's kind of in the same way. Both Bowser and the county are in a difficult position here, but somebody needs to step up and
Yeah, just say,
say,
this is the way it's gonna be.
this is what it's gonna be.
Yep.
When I went through this information, all I wrote down was one question. What is Jackson Tim's recommendation for moving forward? You guys are the ones
Yeah.
involved with this, make a recommendation.
Personally, at this point, I think dissolution may be our best
Yeah.
course of action.
Well,
I mean, otherwise, we're just gonna keep playing the game.
do we know what the estimated cost of doing that will be?
It'll be legal, so I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna pull out just a number. It's just gonna be probably for each participant, maybe $3,000 or $4,000.
not terrible, but not what we wanna pay either.
Well, you know, the thing about that is that it gets us some finality to this matter. We're not having to deal with it
Yeah.
every year and fight over the budgets and the allocations, and we do buy a little bit of stability if we go this direction.
Is there any way we can put pressure on Bowser and make a decision before we come to terms of disillusionment?
No, I don't think so. I think Bowser is, this is gonna actually dump it in their laps if this happens, because since they haven't made a decision, they're gonna wind up with having to deal with Ham Lake as a sole entity and assign them either to Coon Creek or have the county run them as a separate entity all their own.
majoring in the minors.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I understand Ham Lake's wanting to cut their expenses here, but it's not a, it's not a great deal of money, and in the long run,
No.
it's probably not gonna save anything.
Now,
No.
for what they're trying to save versus the time and effort that's gone into this
Yeah.
already,
Seems irrational to me.
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's already cost us some money and will cost us a little bit more, really no matter which way we go.
Do you need a motion?
I just need some direction, and what we'll do, we'll have another meeting. If this is council's intent to go with dissolution, then we'll
Well,
sit
I'd
down.
say we call their bluff and just
we'll-
empower you to say, okay, well, we're going for dissolution.
And we'll sit down with
And you guys
Columbus.
can go out in the twilight zone and hang out
Yeah.
there.
We'll sit down with Columbus and Linwood and have another meeting and say,
Yeah.
this is the
That's-
consensus of the group.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know this better than we do,
Yeah.
and, you know,
But I think right now, we're just gonna, like Tim said, we're just gonna be playing this game, and
Oh.
we're not gonna get anywhere, and we
Won't
got
get anywhere. Yeah.
better
no,
things to
just
do
like
than this.
dealing with a truculent child.
Yeah,
At some point, you gotta get real.
so if that's the consensus of council, we'll set up another meeting with Columbus and Linwood.
Well,
and-
that's just me talking, I don't have any consensus here. It's me
You
flapping my
inform
gums.
Jamie too of the decision tonight? Let him know?
Yeah, we'll let him know, but what
Yeah,
we'll have
if
to
he-
do is set up a meeting with Columbus and
Yeah,
Linwood
Linwood,
really
yeah,
soon,
yeah.
so if this is the way we're going, and Columbus is gonna go this way, and I spoke with Janet Hagelin today, and she said she had no problem representing this to her council and going in the same
Yeah,
direction.
Pam's the same way we're
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
So,
you guys wanna pipe up over there?
Well, it's the mayor's,
Let's put it this way, the upper room's gonna deal with this sooner or later too, so.
so I'm watching to see what's going on.
I think that's what they're watching, they're watching this
Yeah,
one, then it's gonna
yeah.
happen in the upper room, so.
That's why Tim's involved, whether he wants to be or not.
I mean, they don't have as big as portion in the upper room. Ham Lake, I can see their thing there, but you got another city that wants out of the upper room too, so. Got everything you need?
got everything we need.
Let's try number 8 then, ordinance review, storage containers, appendix A.
Councilman Tim Miller has requested that city council review city ordinance appendix A zoning section 10-4 accessory storage containers. That section of the ordinance reads, accessory storage containers is defined in section 01, general provisions of administration are not permitted use in the city of East Bethel. We provide also the definition of the accessory storage container as found in Appendix A zoning, Section 19. The city did permit the use of one of these storage containers in 2021, but only with the condition that the exterior contained architectural features and was framed and sided with the material and of a color that matched the finish of the home. However, complaints related to this type of accessory structure have resulted in the removal of 4 of these units over the past 6 years. We just passed a handout around just a moment ago that Tim provided us that had some modifications to the ordinance. Those are the ones that we can review, but this is something that has been talked about for quite a while for doing this in limited zoning areas, particularly those in the agriculture and/or rural residential areas. So Tim, if you want to go over your proposed changes.
Thank you, Jack. Starting out, it would be a proposal to amend Appendix A, Section 4. This amendment changes the rule to allow accessory storage containers with conditions. This proposal amendment changes the existing ordinance to allow storage containers in the rural and agricultural properties, sets requirements for size, color, and placement of containers, and outlines and enforcement measures for violations. Starting out, the accessory storage containers as defined in Section 1, general provisions of the administration are permitted within the city of East Bethel on rural residential and agricultural properties, subject to the following requirements. The storage container shall be free of text and graffiti. The storage container shall be of neutral color or shall match the general aesthetics of the primary structure of the property. Neutral colors would be including white, beige, gray, or similar earth tone. The storage container shall not exceed a height of 12 feet. The storage container shall not be stacked on top of one another. The maximum square footage storage of these containers shall be up to 320 square feet for properties under 4 acres, an additional 80 square feet for each additional acre thereafter, which that was thrown in there just for conversation purposes for larger properties. The storage container shall comply all setback requirements as specified in the City of East Bethel zoning ordinances. The storage container shall be screened from view from any adjacent public right-of-way unless the screening is not required due to the location of the storage container on the property. The storage container shall comply with all other applicable city ordinances and regulations, and any violations of this ordinance may result in fines, penalties, or other legal action as deemed appropriate by the City of East Bethel. Basically, is what I'm saying is that when done right, these storage containers are second to none, waterproof, mice-proof. We see them around East Bethel, I see them in East Bethel. I think people in rural areas and you know, farm areas should be able to use these.
And we just did one of these on Jewel Street, what, 2 years ago, year and a half ago?
It was in 2021.
Yeah, they did the upgrades like you got on here, you know, they put some siding on it, they put in
Yeah.
a couple windows in it, but, yeah, we approved one there, so.
I think when done right, it can be utilized, and I think it's something we should seriously consider for the residents here.
I agree.
I agree what you're saying too, Tim, because they are, like you say, rodent-proof is one thing. People that build sheds and stuff like that, there's nothing but mice, rats, everything in there. So it is good, plus they seal really well, and your stuff don't get wrecked as far as I know.
And I think our residents will respect what we're asking and really take into consideration what they can do with them. They can actually dress them up pretty nice to match what's going on around the property, and they'll be utilized. You know, what we don't want, of course, is something all graffitied up or in the front of the house or anything like that for years and years and years.
They did a nice job on the one on Jewel. If you ever get like Jewel down Jewel, go look at that one on Jewel.
Jewel Street?
Yeah.
And that's a good idea, especially with
They did a
just
nice
for
job on
paint,
it.
for paint and stuff, you just keep them up, they look nice. I think it's a great change.
So what do we need to do as far as right now?
All you need to do is just give us directions and we'll write the changes up and then we'll submit that to the planning commission for review,
Sure.
comment.
Makes sense to me.
Is there a lot size restriction on this?
4 acres and under for 320 square feet.
Yeah, 320 square feet would be what, a 40-footer, 40 by 8? Rural residential, I mean, that's something we should talk about too real quick here. What is the limit on where we want to put it? We don't, you know, exactly want them to fill up neighborhoods either.
Because there are some rural residential that are showing 0.68 acres, that they're under 1 acre.
Any thoughts? Should there be a minimum on this, or?
I'm a libertarian, you know what my thoughts are. Who the hell's business is it? If it's a decent looking thing. The one thing that drives me nuts in these zoning ordinances is how everything has to look the same. By gosh, I mean, I don't know where that's coming from, but I can't think of a more boring way to design a town than everything looks the same.
Right.
You know, what the hell? So, I don't know. I don't really see how the lot size should be a factor.
As long as it's following the proper setbacks of the city?
What's the difference?
Right, I agree.
I mean, again, are those of us who are behind changes like this just want to lighten up the hand of government upon the residents.
Right.
You know, we understand you gotta do things so you're not damaging your neighbor's property values and all that, but again, the city staff certainly has other things to think about besides going out and inspecting every shed. You know, come on. I hope you
Well,
do anyway.
You do.
Yeah, I could imagine you do.
Well, why it traditionally wasn't allowed is it's an industrial container. And not everybody likes to look at an industrial container. The shipping
Across the
containers.
road and over 100 yards from my
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, not everybody likes to see that.
Well,
If you
yeah.
have a
Yeah.
property big enough that you can properly screen it and nobody off your property can see it, I can see that being possible allowed use, but where you have
Yeah,
rural,
we're not talking about a tractor trailer, you know,
Yeah.
something,
yeah, but where you
roll
have
off, you know.
rural residential use of, that there's lots in the city that are under an acre, 2 acres.
Yeah.
That if some residents may not appreciate having a shipping container
Well, yeah.
versus looking at a shed. If they
Yeah.
wanted
We're
to,
talking
if the,
about sheds, yeah.
if the individual wanted to get a shipping container and do what they did on Jewel Street and put a different exterior on it, then I see no issues with that.
And the one on Jewel Street was a little unique in that the container was already there
Mhm.
and they were issued a citation for it. So they appealed for an administrative hearing in front of, and I think maybe you were at that hearing, Brian.
That was,
So it's kind of a compromise in trying to work around it. The city came and said, you can keep it there, but you just have to kind of mask its appearance as a shipping
Put a
container.
wrapper around
Put
it.
a wrapper around it, that's
Yeah.
correct. And
Yeah.
the roof, and they did a very good job on it.
yeah. Because obviously, in the past, this has been complaint driven, and as Jack put into the packet, that complaints did come from residents in the past, and that's why those things were enforced, so that would lead a person to believe that not everybody likes looking at a bare shipping container.
Were all those complaints, because of graffiti on the side, shipping container of different color or
Industrial,
rusted and?
Most of them were because they were highly visible.
Okay.
They weren't screened, and in fact, one of them was almost in a side yard on a corner lot on a busy street, so not on Laurel and Bryant Lane, no.
So if they do what we ask them to do in here, we shouldn't have any problems, or
That-
limited, very
Yeah,
limited problems.
that should address a lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Deal with it.
And, you know, we've had this discussion before, and especially on agricultural properties, you know, if you got 40 acres and.
Yeah, agricultural,
Yeah, that's, to me, that's, you can put one out anywhere and nobody will hardly ever see it. The rural residential, I think, is another option. I think some of the R1, R2 zones are probably a little bit smaller lots, and it'd make it more difficult for that. But, I think this is something that's good to consider. We've had some preliminary discussions on this in the past, but never acted on it.
Well, that would be my suggestion, that we put something like this in there. And if they follow everything, we should have no issues. I mean,
And if we do, we can always change it.
Exactly.
Instead of writing
Yeah.
zoning
Instead of
ordinances
change it
that
before it happens.
anticipate
Move.
everything that could ever possibly happen.
Yeah.
you know?
Sit there.
Because it seems to me,
Yeah.
we have a lot of them around.
Right. Well, yeah, there is.
Oh.
And to do this, like, you know, if nobody complains about it, then we don't look into it, isn't really the way I think we should be, you know, even looking at something like this anymore. This is the way we wanna see it.
And, you know.
You know, it benefits
yeah.
us all.
And to your point, there are a lot of them, they are in demand, they are ways that people can store a lot of stuff that would be stored in their yard too, which addresses another part of the issue. You know, as long as they're done to kind of blend in a little bit better. Most, the ones that we've run into, they've had issues with, is somebody just unloads it and there it is, it's rusted and, it's not the greatest addition to their neighbor's property, but, I think it's something that's very worthwhile to look into.
Yeah, so what do you need us to do, if anything?
Just direct us to present this to the planning commission for their review. That's
Are
what.
we in agreement?
Yeah, presented as written.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, we're on our 2-hour thing. You wanna finish this up, Jack?
We just got one more. Let's go real quick here on this one if you want to.
Conduct policy?
Councilmember Miller has requested City Council consider
That
the.
guy again?
Yeah. The adoption of an advisory board adequate conduct policy. Mr. Miller's request was sent for council on the agenda on April 28, 2023, as an addition to the work meeting. The city personnel policy primarily addresses full and part-time employees, but advisory board and city council are generally exempt from the rules outlined for the employee group. Should the city desire the development of value statement expressing core principles for and adequate ethical conduct or a formal conduct code, staff can contact the League of Minnesota Cities for policies that have been adopted that address this matter. There is a sample statement of values as a model template in attachment 2. I think in order to avoid anything, if you want to pursue this, this should be to address those items that aren't addressed in the personnel policy, which would be for advisory boards, committees, commissions, authorities, and city councils. That's just my only recommendation.
Well, I want to talk about this a little bit. First and foremost, when I asked to do this, about this, I was frustrated and wrote a letter to you, Jack, about this. My tone is different when I'm writing a one-on-one letter. My frustration is different. I would have wrote that letter entirely differently if I would have known it was going to be CC'd to every citizen in this city. Because I made it, when I wrote it to you, it said to Jack Davis. I didn't write it to Jack Davis and everyone else. I was trying to take advantage of what you say to me after every meeting. If there's anything I can ever do to help you, Tim, let me know. So I apologize to the people who were offended by that letter. We have good people on our committees. We have excellent people on our committees. I would have chosen my words a lot differently to explain my frustration of what's going on. I think every council member up here knows exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the attitude and what we're getting from some people in our committees. We've been accused of not using Robert's rules. Let me tell you something. I spend most of my free time trying to get positive results for this city. And all we're getting is insults. And that bothers me. Because the key factor, and this is coming right from committees and Robert's rules, the introduction, 2 committees, newest addition. A committee is a group of volunteers who have agreed to do a job defined by someone else. The key fact about a committee is that they are not their own master. When a board of directors, a city council creates a committee, it has the right and the duty of deciding what the committee is called, who will chair it, who will serve on it, what job it is to do, and when the job it will be over. If the authority that creates the committee chooses, it may change the mandate, remove the chair, add members, or take them away, ignore committee recommendations, or even dissolve committee before the work is complete. As you know here, we've been having issues. I'm not going to go into some of these issues directly because it involves people who were on committees before or council. If you'd like to go through my decisions or why we support things, I'd be more than happy to talk with anybody personally about them. The fact remains that we need our committees to get our jobs done, plain and simple. We need the feedback, we need intel, we need the analysis, we need the ideas, we need the knowledge to help our decisions be the right decisions for this city. And by bringing back some of the things we did, public forum, for example, it's hard to sit here and just take, I'm gonna say, some of the abuse and some of the things that were said that, according to this, you've taken a position to work for a council, to give it your best effort, and even if the decision goes the wrong direction, it's not time to stand up in front. And believe me, I'm all for the First Amendment and saying what you gotta say. But to continually badmouth us publicly, that has gotta come to an end, because we need, and we have an opportunity to do some great things for the city, and I think we are absolutely missing it 100%. We need to understand both sides of what our jobs are gonna be. And I'm not saying they're all at fault or we're all at fault. There's equal parts here that are in play. But the bottom line is, this needs to end. Our committees have to understand that if a decision is made by the majority of an elected official, they have to get behind that decision and respect that decision. We don't have that right now, and we need it. This city can be run a lot different than it is right now, and that's why there are a few of us who are sitting here, because they wanted to go a different direction. They wanted to try something new. They wanted something changed, and we're trying to deliver it, and right now we're not able to deliver it. I tell you, I got 26 ordinances, 26 changes right here that I cannot get in front of the committees I need to get in front of, because we're playing this game round and round. I have tried to tell, either in certain ways, different committees like the one I'm on with Parks, is that, hey man, we're willing to work with you. We want to work with you. You're here for a reason. You volunteered. It isn't an easy job. We're not doing it because of the pay. We're doing it because we want to improve this city. As a city council member, and our committee should understand, it is in our best interest to give our businesses every advantage we can to come here, to succeed, and to move on. Our farmers, every advantage, and then some, to be successful. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And that's why I wanted to be a part of this city council and bring some changes. And we're starting to do things, but we're 4 or 5 months into this. We should be way farther than what we are now. And as I said in the letter, I said, you know, I really don't want to go down this road, because I think we could be much better. If we have to, at least we need to establish some boundaries that respect each other and respect the process. And that's really what I'm looking for here. It's why I want to talk about it. It's something we haven't talked about as a group. It's not like we can go out for a beer after this and say, hey, what do we do to fix this? See, this has got to be fixed in areas like this. And I mentioned earlier, I apologize to some people who were offended by it. That letter was not meant for the public. But I will own it. I wrote it. I say we're 100% accountable for what we do. I believe in that, both privately and publicly. So to those people, I do apologize. But there's certain circumstances, we all know what they are, and I am asking this council what we should do about it. How do we fix this? How do we move on? How do we make a decision that affects the residents without having these major blow-ups here? Because this is not getting city government done. We owe the residents a lot more than this. And that's why I asked to talk about it.
No, I'm glad you did, Tim.
If you Google, for example, What is the role of an advisory council member? It is to provide current knowledge, critical thinking, analysis to increase confidence of the decision makers who represent the city. That's huge. We're not getting that. And I don't want to be a rogue councilman, and I don't want to say we're doing things, just our way. I mean, we're reaching out so we understand each other and we can take advantage of each other's knowledge. There's a lot that goes into these decisions, as you guys know, and they're very important decisions. But we need to start making them as a team, and if it means we have to, get some sort of code of conduct so we don't do what we're doing now.
Sometimes you gotta reshuffle the team.
And that's what I want to talk about. If you guys want to touch base on it, that's fine. If we want to.
I think what you're saying is common sense.
So do I.
And if people don't wanna abide by it, then they should just voluntarily have some honor and say, I can't get on board with what you guys are pursuing. And so I'm not contributing, so I'll just put myself on the bench. Leave the team, let us try to find somebody who will. And it's not being yes people to us or anything, we wanna hear a difference of opinion. But to actively work against the people, that's why I wasn't interested in having two people who were up for nomination placed on the committee that they were nominated for, because I knew they would be actively undermining it, because I hear it from other people that they're actively doing it every day. And why would you invite a fox in your hen house,
Well, that's the hard
on
thing.
purpose? Well, it seems like a very dumb thing to do, to me, why bring conflict that you don't need? And the other case where we didn't vote for somebody, I just felt like they needed to live in the city longer, that's all. That was the only thing. It wasn't anything wrong with the person, appreciated their desire, but just thought it would be helpful if they lived in the city a longer period of time. Get to know it a little bit better, like we all had to. Doesn't mean you gotta live here 25 years or something, but a little bit of time is good. But those are the only three things we've, gone contrary on. And boy, you'd think we murdered one of their kids. It's ridiculous, the reaction. I think I've had the brunt of it at this point, and that's fine. I told you guys up front, I'm a 2-year man, so I'll take the brunt of it, and you guys can live with it the rest of the time. I don't know. I think in the case of a couple of people, they're just going to have to find something else to do, because they seem. I'm reminded of the movie Network. You ever see that movie? And they described Ned Beatty was the big boss, as he was opposed to their plan. Mm-hmm. And somebody asked Robert Duvall, really? He objected to it? He said, intractable and adamantine is the words I use, But these people are not going to get with the program. They're not going to stop opposing us every step of the way. And we just have to respectfully say, this isn't working. It's just not working. And we have things to get done, and you're a big obstacle. And you like being that obstacle. And we don't like you being that obstacle, so we're just gonna have to. It says right there, I noticed that you didn't use the revised version of that portion of the Muni Code, section 271, which has been revised as of recently, but it says right there, commission members shall serve staggered terms of 3 years and may be removed by a majority vote of the full city council. That's all it takes. These are not birthrights. Doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it. If you cannot get with the current program, have the honor to resign. That would be my advice. Because, we want as many residents as possible in East Bethel to participate in this government. But we do not need people who are just trying to frustrate us at every move. That's just unproductive, as Tim said. And they'll shut up.
That's the problem we're facing in some aspects, is that we know they're qualified for the position.
Yeah.
But we also know that we are getting shredded in the public
Yeah.
at different places. And I don't know who would want somebody on their advisory board if you know this is going on. And that's some of the things that the general public doesn't actually know. But these are the things that are real that we're dealing with. And we're dealing with the best we can. And that would be, I don't know who in their right mind would have a job after that if they hired someone who they knew was doing that to a company.
Not anybody who ever managed people.
Correct.
You would never intentionally hire a saboteur.
No.
Jack, you would never do that.
No.
Somebody who you knew was gonna undermine you every step of the way, or lie, steal, use drugs, any of those things, you'd never have them around. Cause all they are is trouble from dawn up till sunset. You're just better off just avoiding it altogether. And I'm not saying any of these people have those problems, but just that constant obstreperous, if you like that word, just like a child that just will not behave, You just gotta deal with it at some point, Go to your room or whatever it is, but this isn't working.
And we got work to do.
And I think we've been pretty patient. I've been told by a number of people who know me somewhat, they said, I can't believe how patient you've been when people are talking to you like that. I said, you can't believe it, I can't believe it either. Because it's not my nature to just sit there but that's the role we play, so that's how we have to behave. Just listen to them and don't react.
Well, that's where it's at. I mean, it's a decision we all have to make, but I think it's a decision that in some form is necessary. I mean, we have to protect each other, we have to protect the professionalism of both sides. And we sure as heck do not want to look divisive, divided, because we'll never get the trust of the public that way. And we need them to believe what we're doing, because we've got some big things and we've got a lot of things we want to do to help improve this city and the way of life.
And that's bigger than anybody's
Absolutely.
personal desires. Well, I don't know if we need a code of conduct, but we need to make it clear that we're serious about it. I'd say that much.
Well, I would agree that something has to change. I don't believe that this is the way. I think by instituting this, it's going to drive a bigger wedge between council and any commission. Because
What are you speaking of, policy or something, is that what you mean?
well, in some of this, it talks about forcing respect.
Oh, this is the stuff from the League of Minnesota Cities, that thing?
Yeah, that's not from me.
Yeah, that's.
I did not put that in there, nor did I add it. That was
Yeah,
added.
that's from the League of Minnesota Cities, incredibly overwritten. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it-
you
it
can't,
would-
you can't mandate respect. That's not even
No,
feasible.
and I've served on and seen many different commissions over the years. They've served under different city councils, and for the most part, everybody's always had a decent decorum with each other. Why it is right now, not quite sure.
Because we didn't give them what they wanted. It's very simple. I mean, Brian, you know that's exactly what it is. We didn't go along to get along. And we didn't do it because we didn't
Oh.
want people who would be fighting us every step of the way. That's really what it is.
Yeah, we can avoid that discussion, because there'd just be more disagreement there, but.
Obviously, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I know, and, well, we probably won't see eye to eye
Well,
on
it's-
that, and that's okay.
Probably just not my opinion, it's probably three of us' opinion.
Yeah, but I
Open your eyes.
I don't believe that this would be the proper way forward.
Well, what is the proper way forward, other than us
I-
abandoning all of our
I-
goals?
I don't know exactly
You
on
don't
the
know.
spot.
Oh,
Simple.
I did not present this item, nor
Oh.
would I be ready to present anything else. I just look at this simple item and I think it would drive a bigger wedge in the issues that are happening between council. and-
ironically, this might surprise you, but I agree with you. I don't think a policy is going to do it. I think it's gonna require some actions on our part to make it clear what we're talking about. And they're not gonna make people love us any more than actions we've taken so far. But that's just what is gonna have to happen, it's gonna have to happen.
Yeah.
Let me
I
read
honestly,
one-
I honestly believe that, because the people I'm thinking of are adamant about being the way they are. And I respect them as a human being, but I don't wanna have to deal with their issues.
I'd like to read one more thing before we kind of end this topic and move off of it. I had a little help with this one. City staff, elected officials, and advisory board members should always conduct themselves with professionalism and courtesy toward the public. City representatives, elected officials, and each other when addressing city business. They should approach disagreements in a positive fashion and refrain from personal attacks and abide by the decision of the city council. The city of East Bethel is best served by a fair, ethical, and accountable local government which earns the public's full confidence for integrity, honesty, and transparency. A close working relationship between council members and advisory board members is essential to fulfilling public responsibilities. The role of an advisory committee is to provide recommendations to the city council that are based on current knowledge, critical thinking, and analysis. That's simple. It's straightforward, it's simple. This is what we need to have happen. This is what our committees and this council needs to understand and how to work together. We don't need a 5-page list of this or that. We need to have an understanding between the two groups that what we're doing.
You know
why
what
we're
it is,
doing it.
ironically, Tim? It's to treat each other with exactly the respect that those people who came before us demanded for themselves, while not showing us any. I found that ironic at the time, the claims that we just want to be respected, meanwhile, they're doing nothing but dumping on us. I thought, that's interesting that you would have that perspective while you're doing it. I just found it funny, kinda. No, that's very well said. And what do we do about it? I don't know. Everybody's got their own view, I guess.
Well, it's a starting point.
Huh?
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
You know my opinion. That's how I feel. That's what I feel we need to work together with this. Now I'm asking other people. I'm right here. I'm willing to work with you. I'm gonna show you all the respect I possibly can. But you gotta be willing to try. You gotta be willing to see a vision for the future. You gotta be able to believe why we were put in these chairs, why people wanted us here. We need a chance to make the changes we need to make, and we need the people on board to do it. And like Evan said, I mean, if you don't want to be part of this change or part of what we're trying to do, let someone else sit in then.
Yeah,
Step down.
be honest with yourself and everybody else and just say, no, I'm not behind you guys at all. Okay. No harm done. No great offense taken, we don't expect everybody to think the same as us.
No.
That's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion too. But you weren't the ones who were voted into office. You know, we are, and we have a job to do, and we have to do it. Or we can resign, but we don't see that we need to resign. We just need people who are willing to help us. That's all.
That's all I have to say.
I agree exactly with what you're saying. I look at it different. This is my own opinion. And if people are not willing to work with you, then you're just holding us back. We were voted in here by the residents, the businesses, and they all want to change, and it's obvious. And they're used to doing things one way. We're thinking different ways, and we're here for the residents and the businesses. And the simplest thing, like Kevin says too, if you don't want to go along with what we're doing, then just resign. And if you're not going to resign, and if you're still going to be against what we're doing, because we are looking out for the residents, I'd rather hear from all the residents that live here than somebody on a commission that, I don't know if it's their own ego or whatever it is, that they just are upset because we're sitting here and they're not. The people put us here for a reason, and we're gonna do the best that we can. And if that takes the case that we gotta remove you, then we're going to. That's all I got to say.
And one of the things, Jack, is that new ordinance requires people to prove their residency. I follow my own propositions. Here's a copy of my driver's license where I've lived for 27 years as of next Monday night, May 8th, 1996. So I expect everybody on every commission to be able to provide some means of proving that you're a resident of the city. That's part of the ordinance now. Whether it's published in the Muni code yet or not, we've adopted it. So there's the first, that covers me anyway.
I'd get a different picture, but.
Yeah, I know, that's
There's no
frightening,
cowboy
isn't
hat
it?
on there.
I know, it's frightening. Okay, what do you need, a motion to adjourn?
That's it.
Yep.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I knew he would.
Second.
Motion made, second discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?